By the end of this video, you're gonna know exactly how to get over your fear of rejection forever. And how do I know this? Because for nearly 2 decades, I've taken students out on boot camps and we've gotten them over their fear of rejection, their approach anxiety with nearly a 100% success rate. So these tools absolutely work. Question is, are you going to use them? So as I said at the top of this video, every student I get on boot camp, we're able to get them through approach anxiety, fear of rejection, to the extent that they can do more approaches in a weekend than they probably could have possibly imagined coming in. And how are we able to do that? There's basically 3 components to the training. 1 is the mindset, 2 is the tools and actions, and 3 is the hand-holding. In this video, I can give you the mindset, I can give you the tools. Unfortunately, I can't give you the hand-holding through the camera. I'll do the best I can to encourage you, but that part you're gonna have to do yourself. But let's get into it. Mindset first. So the first element of your mindset is understanding what is an approach and what is a rejection. First of all, what is an approach? Here's what an approach is. An approach is literally you physically walking over to a girl and making a noise where she looks over at you and recognizes that you're there. Or physically walking over to the girl and tapping her on the shoulder so she realizes there's someone that's attempting in some way to get her attention. That is it. That is doing an approach. And what I will tell students on boot camp is that's your job. Everything that comes after that is my job. Your job is to walk over and make a noise. My job is to make everything from that noise to your eventual interaction, to your flirtation, to possibly making out, taking a girl home, forming a relationship. That's all my job. Your job is very, very simple. Walk over and make a noise. After which you have done an approach. And if approach anxiety was your issue, you can walk away happy that you've at least achieved getting through approach anxiety for that one approach, right? So make the process very simple. One major reason why guys have approach anxiety, it's not even anxiety over the initial approach, it's anxiety over what's going to happen a minute and 2 minutes and 5 minutes and 10 minutes and 3 hours later. And guys are essentially waiting for every stoplight to be green before they go to the approach. They want to know what they're going to say to the girl in the bedroom before they're willing to walk up and say hi to her in a bar, right? Take it one step at a time and realize that whatever your current sticking point is, that's the thing you're working on, and achieving that is a victory. So if you're dealing with fear of rejection, approach anxiety, what is an approach for you? Walking over, making a noise. If you do that and then you forget how to speak English and walk away, that is still a success, because the thing you're working on, the thing that you are currently struggling with, you achieved in that instance, and you got one more rep of doing it successfully. Secondly, what is a rejection? If you walk up to a girl and it doesn't go all the way well, what does that mean? If you walk up and you have a conversation that peters out into nothing, or you walk up, you talk to the girl for a little bit, and then her boyfriend comes, into the conversation and you didn't even know he was there, or you talk to the girl, her friends drag her away. What is a rejection? Is it a condemnation of you as a human being? No, it's not. It is a rejection of that approach, that situation, in that moment. And sometimes it's not even your fault. Some approaches are simply not winnable. If you walk over to a girl, you get half a word out of your mouth and the boyfriend is there, it almost doesn't matter how good your game is. If he's being protective and pulling her away, that's just not going to happen, right? You physically are not going to be able to speak to her past that one half a word, and it doesn't matter what was going to come for the next 10 minutes. It doesn't matter how charismatic you were about to be. You simply didn't have a chance. So if a girl rejects your approach, she's not rejecting you. It could be also that you went over and did an amazing approach, and you know what? That's the day the girl's grandma died. Or that's the day that she's out with a friend who she owes a huge favor to, and her friend's being very needy and won't let her talk to you no matter what. The fact that an approach doesn't go well does not make you less of a human. It does not make you a loser at life. It does not mean that you're destined to be a failure with women throughout all of eternity. It just means this one specific instance didn't go your way. As men, there's a tendency that we have to extrapolate how a girl feels about you to your self-worth. It is not a reflection of your self-worth, it's a reflection of simply that approach. And for example, if your opener had a slightly different tonality, it might have worked, whereas with this tonality, it didn't, right? And changing one little tool did not fundamentally make you a success at life instead of a failure at life. It's simply a skill. It's simply an interaction. Is simply one instance where there's a lot of randomness involved, okay? So do not treat the rejection of an approach as a rejection of you. Do not treat a rejection of approach as something permanent. It's something that happened in this one discrete moment and then it's done. Along the lines of this mindset, and particularly the mindset that there is randomness involved, you should view approaches to some extent as a numbers game. Imagine if you were a salesman doing cold calling, where you pick up the phone and you're going to call a potential prospect for the thing you want to buy. And you know in advance, the majority of them are just going to hang up and be like, nope, not interested. I'm at dinner. I don't want to take this call. However, some of them are going to be interested. Some of them are going to talk to you on the phone. Some of them will set an appointment, and some of them you'll be actually able to sell to. And if you do enough calls, you will make a lot of money as a salesperson. But you got to have thick skin. You're going to have to deal with some rejections to get there. It's kind of the same thing with cold approach. So for example, let's say it takes 10 calls to make an appointment and 3 appointments on average to make a sale. Well, then every single time you pick up your phone, you made 1/130th of a sale, whether that particular prospect was the one you set an appointment and made the sale with or not. And so if you want to make a certain income as a salesperson, you say, I need to make this many calls per week. And yes, you do need to come to play on those calls. You do need to deliver. Every single call is part of a sales career that's going to make you a lot of money. It's the same thing with an approach. It's similar in cold approach. Every single time you take a rejection, that's one rejection closer you are to an eventual success. And as you get better, as you develop skills, the ratio will shrink. But even at a beginner level, if you simply are willing to be tough and put yourself out there, you will get successes. Therefore, every approach is a fractional success, right? Every time you do an approach, you actually did achieve a fraction of getting to your goal of eventual success, and that's how you should view it. And finally, not only are you playing the current numbers game when you do an approach, but you are actually learning. So every single approach you do not only is a fractional success right now, but it's a learning experience that is tightening that learning curve, that's shortening your numbers game. And to kind of make this point, I'll tell you something that was taught to me when I was a professional poker player, which is when I was playing poker at a certain hourly rate, I was making a certain amount per hour playing in the game I was playing in. But my poker coaches, who were world-class players making 10 or 20 times what I was making, were very quick to point out to me that my actual rate for sitting down and playing poker wasn't the $20 or $40 or $60 an hour I was making from that actual game. It was that plus the increase I was getting from taking notes, learning, improving my poker to eventually be able to play in a game where I could make 200 or 400 or 800 an hour. The idea is you have your current expected value plus the fact that you're learning, which exponentially increases your expected value. So every time you do an approach, it's not only a success in terms of playing the numbers game, it's also a success in terms of shrinking the numbers game. But you cannot do either of those things without doing the approach. Therefore, every single approach is a huge win. Finally, every single time you approach a girl and you don't die, you're telling your body through experience that it's fundamentally safe, all right? So every single time you do an approach, one of two things is going to happen. Either the girl is going to respond positively, which is going to be feedback from the world that you are a person of value, that you have something to offer, that it'll increase your self-esteem and make it easier and more rewarding for you to do the next approach. Or the girl's going to reject you, in which case you will have just taken a public rejection and nothing bad happened to you, and it will be telling your psyche that the world is safe. Every single approach leads to one or the other positive feedback. It either leads to evidence of competency and self-esteem, or it leads to evidence that the world is a safe place. Therefore, every single approach makes the next one and the next one and the next one that much easier. So those are the principles or the mindsets, if you will. But how do we use those? How do we put those into practice to actually get you over that approach anxiety, get you over that fear of rejection in real life? Well, there's 2 approaches that I take. One that I will recommend primarily to you guys doing it without me right next to you. And then I'll also share with you another one that I do on bootcamp that you can use if you're a bit daring. So the first approach relies on kind of a little gimmick, a little glitch in the social matrix, which is this. You can't be rejected for something you didn't ask for. Right? You cannot be rejected for a relationship if you were not man to woman enough to request a relationship. You cannot be rejected for friendship if you didn't even indicate you wanted to be friends. Now, this is backwards to a lot of the theory of what you actually want to do in game, because in game, you do want to make it personal. You do want to make it man to woman eventually. But in the short run, if you're nervous about just doing an approach, make that approach as easy as possible. It's completely fine if your first approaches are walking up to a girl, asking directions, and intending to leave afterward, right? Because you will have shown yourself through those approaches that it's okay to interrupt someone and you won't get a negative response. You will have gotten a little more used to having a conversation with a stranger. You will convince yourself that people in the world are generally nice and will help you out. That's progress along the way. Now, is that an approach that's likely to lead to a high degree of success? No, not yet, but it is leading to a lot of the right behavior. It's leading to a lot of repetitions of going to the edge of what you might be scared of without anything negative happening. So if you're scared of walking up and telling a girl you like her, but you're not scared of asking for directions, First, practice going up and asking for directions. Once you're completely okay with that, you can ratchet it up a little bit. You can ratchet it up and ask for directions, and then thank her and tell her she's sweet. And now you just gave her a compliment. You've come a lot closer to doing a real approach, but you're still with the intention that at any point, if I want to, I can leave, right? And see how by doing this, we're not waiting for all the lights to be green. We're not saying, oh, I'm going to do this thing and this thing and this thing 10 minutes in and this thing an hour in, and then I'm going to take her home. You actually are planning on leaving, right? The fact that you're planning on leaving of your own free will means it's impossible to get a rejection. You can't get rejected if you're planning on leaving anyway. So what you're doing is you're getting used to approaching in a scenario where rejection's completely impossible, then one where it's highly, highly unlikely, almost impossible, then one where it's a little more likely, but still very hard. And you're gradually ratcheting up the pressure to the point where you might be a little nervous. Then you do it enough that you're comfortable with that. Then you ratchet it up a little bit. Do it enough you're comfortable with that. Ratchet it up a little bit. This process in psychology is known as progressive desensitization. And this is actually how people get over all kinds of phobias. For example, if you had a fear of snakes, you might first look at like a picture of a snake on a piece of paper and just get used to being near that. Then you might look at a snake on TV. And then you might look at a snake in a cage across the room far away from you. You gradually bring it closer and closer and closer until you're able to deal naturally with the idea of the existence of a snake, right? Same kind of thing. You're gradually going to ratchet up until you get to a real cold approach. And the good news is it's actually not that many steps between, hey, can you give me directions somewhere, to, hey, I like you, I'd like to meet you. A few discrete steps will get you there, and each one isn't that big of a jump from the last one. So once you're comfortable with each one, the next step is very, very small. So that progressive desensitization is one way of getting used to approaches and getting yourself to actually do it, get positive feedback, show yourself it's okay, and be on the right path. So that progressive desensitization method is one of the absolute best things you can do on your own to get over approach anxiety when I'm not there with you. And it's actually also something I'll have bootcamp students do if they're struggling in particular with approach anxiety, fear of rejection, that kind of stuff. There is another methodology I'll use on bootcamp. I like to use this one when I'm actually present to guide the process and handhold and help someone through it psychologically, but it can be very effective. And if you're tough enough to do it on your own, it absolutely can still work for you. And it is faster than progressive desensitization. It's a little harder, but it's also faster. And I call this the shock and awe approach. And in this case, instead of making what you're doing way easier, you actually just make it harder. You actually just go for the thing that scares you the most right away, because by comparison, everything else is much, much, much easier. And again, on bootcamp, I might do this holding someone's hand, right? Like I might say to someone, find the most scary approach in this entire bar, and we're going to do that approach. But the key there is we're going to do it. So I'll be right there with them to hold their hand to help them to do it. Or I might even do it in front of them first and then have them do it. And the core principle here is that other idea I told you before, which is that out of every approach, you're either getting a strong positive reaction, which boosts your self-esteem and confidence for the next one, or you're getting a strong negative reaction, which is actually a good thing because it proves that even the worst negative isn't that bad. And once you've taken a few of the worst rejections you can imagine and realize they're not a big deal, suddenly all of the other rejections seem like nothing. And this one works with an incredibly high rate of success. However, I do prefer this for when I'm actually there in person with a student, just in case they take the reaction in a bad way, I'm able to help them reframe it and get going from there, right? So if you're tough enough to handle this, this is a very fast way through your approach anxiety, but be careful because it's less of a linear process and there will be more ups and downs involved with it than there would be with progressive desensitization. And by the way, these two approaches are actually literally what I did myself years and years ago to get through my own approach anxiety. I started off because I was so nervous even doing an approach, just asking for directions or something like that. Another big one I did is called the cologne opener. I'd spray a cologne on 2 different wrists in the mall and I'd ask girls their opinion which cologne they thought smelled better. I did a lot of approaches like that to get me desensitized and able to just approach girls. And then a few years later in my game learning curve, when I was actually a coach, I had another person who I coached with, and I told him every time we went out somewhere together, it was his job to pick the absolute hardest approach in the place, and he was going to send me to do that approach first. I did this for about a month and a half, something like that. And once I had done that, I no longer had fear of any scenario in terms of approach anxiety. So I actually used the shock and awe method on myself once I already had gotten over most of my approach anxiety to eliminate it completely. So here are the primary mindsets and tools you're going to use to get over your approach anxiety. And most of this process is an internal process. You're talking about fear of rejection, approach anxiety. Anxiety and fear are emotions. So this is an emotional process. However, the nice thing is once you start this process, the world is actually going to help you out. And here's why. As soon as you start taking action and getting rejections, you're going to find out that outright rejections, are actually extremely rare. Most rejections don't look like, off you loser, get out of my face, you they don't look like that. They look like, okay, well, thank you for talking to us. I have to go now, but it was so sweet of you to come over, right? It's actually quite nice. Girls are actually quite polite, and it's not actually that big of a deal, right? In fact, a lot of times it'll be something like, hey, listen, I'm sorry, I do have a boyfriend, but thank you so much. You absolutely made my day. Like, keep doing what you're doing. It's awesome, right? That's a rejection, right? Most rejections are actually not that harsh. Most rejections are friendly, and most of the time, girls actually appreciate it when you come over and talk to them, even if it doesn't actually go somewhere. However, you would never know that unless you actually did the approach. So this is another reason why just getting started, taking action, helps so much, because you're going to get that real world feedback that's going to show you that. So what you've probably imagined as what a rejection is and the consequence of a rejection is this like overblown thing. The reality is really not a big deal by comparison. And again, once you take action, you're going to see that, and the world is going to show you that truth. Next up, I want to give you a little, you could call it a bonus skill that's going to help you through this process. And this is called the art of getting rejected gracefully. So let's say you go do an approach and it's not going great. It's not an outright rejection yet, but you kind of know the writing's on the wall. Well, you know what? You can always just leave gracefully and leave in a friendly way. Be like, you know what? It's great talking to you guys. I got to go check out my friends, but you guys have a great night. And then you walk off and it's completely fine. And this can be useful in the sense that you avoided a rejection. And it can also be useful because one of the things that guys are scared of with the rejection is not the rejection of the girl herself, but let's say you're in a bar or a social setting, you're worried that it will look awkward to the people around you. That's a major fear guys have. But if you walk away in a pleasant way, or you always say, you know what, it was great meeting you, take care, have a great night. If you leave on that note, it looks to all the world like it was just a friendly, good interaction, and it's not going to negatively social proof you, and it's not going to make you look bad. In fact, if anything, it's going to make you just look like a social guy and like you have friends. And that's what's going to happen as long as you can just be graceful about the ending of the interaction. And by the way, even if the entire interaction has been really bad, if you end it pleasantly, the other person will probably just end it pleasantly as well, because there's no point in not doing so. Next bonus. If anything awkward ever happens, you can also leave gracefully on that. So if you go talk to a girl and her boyfriend comes over like, oh shit, hey, nice to meet you. You guys look great together. That's amazing. I hope you guys have a great night. Anyway, take care. And you walk away gracefully, right? You can almost always walk away gracefully. Girl's friend pulls away, oh cool, yeah, you guys have fun together. Have a great night, bye. You can change the tone of a rejection into a non-rejection very, very easily, even up to the very end. So knowing this and having that skill, and you can even practice those lines. Hey, sorry, look, I didn't know she was your girlfriend, but you guys look great together. You have a great night. If you're comfortable saying that, now it's no longer nearly so scary that the girl might have a boyfriend. Final thing that's going to happen once you start doing approaches, and this is absolutely amazing, is that your actual skill in approaches is going to get better, and your ability to say things is going to get better. And your catalog of things you've said in the past that have worked will become bigger. And so you're going to have more competence. You're going to know explicitly you're better at game than you used to be. And as your competence grows, your confidence will also grow. Every single rep you have of things going well will grow your confidence. Every single time you can repeat that thing that went well in the past, it's going to grow your confidence. And it's this upward spiral where more confidence leads to more competence leads to more confidence, and up and up and up and up. And that is honestly one of the biggest keys to getting good at game, is just establishing that upward spiral. And it doesn't even matter where on the spiral you start. You can start at a very low level of competence and confidence or a very high one, but as long as you're on that upward spiral, you're going to get very good and very confident eventually. So you need to start that spiral as soon as possible. And if you start approaching, promise you, that's going to get started. Final note. Throughout this video, I've been talking a lot about rejection and how rejection is not that big of a deal. And that's very true, and it's very important to realize that. However, you should also know that even if you're not very good yet, even if you're terrified, some success is probably going to happen. And when that happens, that's going to be the most amazing experience ever. I can still remember the first few times I approached a girl and she smiled at me or gave me a warm welcome or gave me a compliment or gave me a phone number. Those experiences fundamentally just changed my view of the world. They changed my view of myself in such a positive way. They were so incredible. And you can only have those experiences if you actually approach. And that's what you're going to find out the more you do approaches. The rejections, they're done quickly and you forget them. The successes are amazing. They last. They can become relationships. They're so fucking worth it. Final note. Throughout this video, we've been talking a lot about rejection and the fact that rejection is not a big deal, which is absolutely important, absolutely critical. But the other fact of the matter is, once you start doing approaches, you're going to get some success. Even if you're not very good, you're going to sooner or later meet a girl for whom you just happen to be her type. Or you're going to meet a girl who is just really in the mood to meet someone that night. That girl could even end up being your next girlfriend. But that can only happen if you actually do the approach. So if you like this video, hit the subscribe button. If you really liked it, hit the like button. If you really, really liked it, tell me how much you love me in the comments, and I'll see you on the next video.